All right. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari. Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari. Yashodanandana Bhajana Ranjana. Yashodanandana Bhajana Ranjana. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Hare Kṛṣṇa, Hare Kṛṣṇa, Kṛṣṇa Kṛṣṇa, Hare Hare, Hare Rāma, Hare Rāma, Rāma Rāma, Hare Hare. Hare Kṛṣṇa, Hare Kṛṣṇa, Kṛṣṇa Kṛṣṇa, Hare Hare, Hare Rāma, Hare Rāma, Rāma Rāma, Hare Hare. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Parivajikacharya Ashtotar Shri Srimad Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai. ISKCON BBT Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Parivajikacharya Ashtotar Shri Srimad Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Ki Jai. Ananda Koti Vaishnavinda Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Srimad Bhagavad Gita Ki Jai. Samaveda Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glory to Shri Guru and Gauranga. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Okay, give me a second here. Okay. On this 17th day of November 2025 in San Diego, we're reading from Srimad Bhagavad Gita as it is, translation and commentary by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. And we are in chapter 13, Nature, the Enjoyer in Consciousness, text 8 to 12 on page 537. And we're going through this long purport, but we'll chant the first of these five verses. 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. 5 verses on the bottom of page 537. Okay. So I'm sorry I didn't get that recorded, so I'm going to record it again. On the 17th day of November, 2025, in San Diego, reading from Srimad Bhagavad Gita as it is, translation and commentary by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. We are in chapter 13, Nature, Lead, and Joy in Consciousness, text 8 to 12, and we'll chant 8 together. Okay. Amanitvam, Adambhidvam, Ahimsa, Chantir, Arjavam, Acharyopasanam, Shaucham, Staryam, Atma, Viniggraha, Amanitvamadambhitvam, Ahimsa Chantirarjavam, Acharyopasanam Shaucham, Stayamatma Viniggraha, Amanitvamadambhitvam, Ahimsa Chantirarjavam, Acharyopasanam Shaucham, Stayamatma Viniggraha, Amanitvamadambhitvam, Ahimsa Chantirarjavam, Acharyopasanam Shaucham, Stayamatma Viniggraha. Tabas. Amanitvamadambhitvam, Ahimsa Chantirarjavam, Acharyopasanam Shaucham, Stayamatma Viniggraha. Jed. Amanitvamadambhitvam, Ahimsa Chantirarjavam, Acharyopasanam Shaucham, Stayamatma Viniggraha. Want to try, people? Amanitvamadambhitvam, Ahimsa Chantirarjavam, Acharyopasanam Shaucham, Stayamatma Viniggraha. Go ahead. Amanitvamadambhitvam, Ahimsa Chantirarjavam, Acharyopasanam Shaucham, Stayamatma Viniggraha. Amanitvamadambhitvam, Ahimsa Chantirarjavam, Acharyopasanam Shaucham, Stayamatma Viniggraha. Amanitvamadambhitvam, Ahimsa Chantirarjavam, Acharyopasanam Shaucham, Stayamatma Viniggraha. Anyone online? Okay, I'll just read the word by words for that first one. Amanitvam, humility. Adambhitvam, pridelessness. Ahimsa, non-violence. Chanti, tolerance. Arjavam, simplicity. Acharyopasanam, approaching a bona fide spiritual master. Shaucham, cleanliness. Staryam, steadiness. Atma Viniggraha, self-control. Okay, I'm going to read the list again, and then we'll go to our purport, which I think is tolerance. I think we're in. What is it? Okay, okay. Humility, pridelessness. I'm sorry. Translation: humility, pridelessness, nonviolence, tolerance, simplicity, approaching a bona fide spiritual master, cleanliness, steadiness, self-control, renunciation of the objects of sense gratification, absence of false ego, the perception of the evil of birth, death, old age, and disease, detachment, freedom from entanglement with children, wife, home, and the rest, even-mindedness amid pleasant and unpleasant events, constant and unalloyed devotion to me, aspiring to live in a solitary place, detachment from the general mass of people, accepting the importance of self-realization, and philosophical search for the absolute truth. All these I declare to be knowledge, and besides this, whatever there may be is ignorance. So we have read part of this purport, and now we're on page 40, 2 paragraphs up, starting with cleanliness. Cleanliness is essential for making advancement in spiritual life. There are 2 kinds of cleanliness, external and internal. External cleanliness means taking a bath. But for internal cleanliness, one has to think of Hare Kṛṣṇa always and chant Hare Kṛṣṇa, Hare Kṛṣṇa, Krishna Kṛṣṇa, Hare Hare, Hare Rāma, Hare Rāma, Rāma Rāma, Hare Hare. This process cleans the accumulated dust of past karma from the mind. Steadiness means that one should be very determined to make progress in spiritual life. Without such determination, one cannot make tangible progress. And self-control means that one should not accept anything which is detrimental to the path of spiritual progress. One should become accustomed to this and reject anything which is against the path of spiritual progress. This is real renunciation. The senses are so strong that they are always anxious to have sense gratification. One should not cater to these demands, which are not necessary. The senses should only be gratified to keep the body fit so that one can discharge his duty in advancing in spiritual life. The most important and uncontrollable sense is the tongue. If one can control the tongue, then there is every possibility of controlling the other senses. The function of the tongue is to taste and to vibrate. Therefore, by systematic regulation, the tongue should always be engaged in tasting the remnants of foodstuffs offered to Krishna and chanting Hare Kṛṣṇa. As far as the eyes are concerned, they should not be allowed to see anything but the beautiful form of Krishna. That will control the eyes. Similarly, the ears should be engaged in hearing about Krishna, and the nose in smelling the flowers offered to Krishna. This is the process of devotional service, and it is understood here that the Bhagavad Gita is simply expounding the science of devotional service. Devotional service is the main and sole objective. Unintelligent commentators on the Bhagavad Gita try to divert the mind of the reader to other subjects. But there is no other subject in the Bhagavad Gita than devotional service. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnanandana Shalakaya Chakshu Unmilitam Mena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkest of ignorance, but my spiritual master Srila Prabhupada opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my humble obeisance unto him and all members of Sri Parampara. It looks like Chad may have done this, but can you just check to make sure whatever doors are between us and the kitchen are closed? Thank you. So, cleanliness. Cleanliness is essential for making advancement in spiritual life. So, we should always remember that we're being conditioned means to be controlled under the modes of nature. And generally, especially in this environment we're in, Kali Yuga, the mode of ignorance is very prominent, passion and ignorance. So the mode of ignorance induces dirtiness, because one of the symptoms of that mode is procrastination, laziness, right? Extra sleep, doing as little as possible. So one of the things that is the first to go is to keep your environment clean and yourself clean. You can survive without that. You can still eat something and everything, but that puts you the mind in the mode of ignorance, which means just the opposite of Krishna consciousness. You won't be attracted to any kind of yoga or discipline like that. Discipline itself of any kind will be something that you only undertake because you have to make some money or you have to survive or something. So the mode of ignorance is very dangerous. And one of the things that induces that in this age especially is the use of intoxicants. Certainly drinking in previous ages, but now there's all kinds of drugs that you can imbibe, And that is sure to cover your consciousness. Prabhupada was confronted with that when he came to America in the Lower East Side, the middle of the hippie era, you know, LSD and marijuana and all kinds of other things. And yet, Prabhupada himself was not affected by that. He himself pushed back against that. I'm sure that oh, thank you. Yeah, hang it in the corridor. So it was a perfect contrast. Prabhupada was a personification of cleanliness, beginning with cleanliness in the heart. When you're chanting Hare Kṛṣṇa, that is cleaning the heart. Cheto darpana marjanam. That's the first thing. And so Prabhupada was you know, a pure devotee. That means that wherever he was, he induced the first thing to be clean. If he had to clean it himself, he did. And as soon as he had some helpers, keeping the storefront clean and whatever else. And so that, the mode, you know, this idea of mode. Sometimes in Prabhupada's books you have to watch out because the word guna is there, right? The three gunas. And that's qualities. So Prabhupada sometimes called it the three qualities of nature. You have to, you know. I think in many cases, in the Krishna book, I went through the whole thing. We did a reprinting, and wherever quality meant modes, we changed it to modes, because the three qualities of nature. Wait a minute, nature has more than three qualities. You know, it's trillions of qualities. So anyway, that's just one thing to watch for. So, Prabhupada, what does he say here? It's essential for making advancement in spiritual life, because we're trying to cultivate the higher mode and to stay in the higher mode. One of the things that we were going through recently was the Nectar of Instruction verse, where it says Atyahara priyascha prajalbo niyamaga janasangascha lavanya shadvi bhakti punashati. But then next one is those are the things that stop devotional service, that destroy it. You know, over collecting, overeating, priyascha, and over endeavor for material things, nonsense talking, means hearing it and repeating it. Niyamagraha means two things. One means to neglect the regular principles of devotional service, regular things, or to go through them just going through the motions. You're there physically, but your mind isn't there. You know, you just kind of just. So that's another niyamagraha. Janasanga. Now Janasanga. Oh, we have another class ready to go on. Hare Kṛṣṇa. Janasanga, because association is so important, right? And if you're associating by hearing or so, you know, or whatever with non-devotees, then that's going to affect your mind, and you know, the result is you'll be affected in the modes, and so cleanliness is a foundational principle. And how did Prabhupada said, how do you external cleanliness means taking a bath, but it means more than that. Taking a bath, keeping your environment clean, your clothes clean, all these different things. But for internal cleanliness, one has to think of Hare Kṛṣṇa always and chant. And I would say, well, they're not mutually exclusive. I wouldn't say they're and. Usually the way that you find of thinking of Krishna all the time begins with chanting Hare Kṛṣṇa all the time, internally and externally. So to think of Krishna always by chanting Hare Kṛṣṇa and other means. This process cleans the accumulated dust of past karma from the mind. So obviously cleanliness is very important. Now steadiness, what was that? Atma vinigraha? Shaucham? Asaktir? Staryam. Which verse is that? Oh, that's the first verse still. Okay. Yeah. So staryam. Now, this steadiness we find kind of emphasized even from the very beginning. When you get this, matva sparshas konteya, shitoshna sukudukata, agama paino nityas, tam tatiksha swabharata. The word staryam isn't there, but it's kind of implied. That in the material world, things will happen that are pleasant and things will happen that are unpleasant for the body. He gives the example of, probably calls it winter and summer, or just heat and cold, right? So this is going to be a disturbance in the body. So how are you tolerating it? Are you freaking out? You know, are you disturbed by all this, or are you able to tolerate it and go on with your practices of devotional service in your life like that? So that's a foundational principle of just living in the material world and trying to come to that point of steadiness, so that whatever happens, and we see this in the extreme example, just right now in the morning program, in the morning classes, we're exploring the pastime of King Ambarish and Durvasa, and you know, Ambarish is this ideal devotee who happens to be a king. Sabai Manak Krishna Badaravan. I won't chant the whole verse. A nice verse that they quoted in the Bhagavad Gita twice, I think. But he begins. It always begins with what are you doing with your mind? Because everything begins with the mind. So Sabai Manak Krishna, but he had his mind fixed on the lotus feet of the Lord. And his words, he was always glorifying Krishna. And with his hands, he was cleaning the temple. And with his tongue, he was tasting the tulsi manjaris that were offered, prasadam. So he goes through the whole list. And but he's a king. He's still running the kingdom, but he's an ideal devotee. He's a pure devotee. So this Durvasa, who has quite a role to play in the Bhagavatam, and he comes in, I think, with Kunti. He visited the Pandavas, and she was serving him very nicely and wanted to give her a boon. And so he gave her the boon that she could call any demigod she wants, So she's just a young girl. She's not, so she said, well, let me try it out, So she calls the sun god. Sun god comes, and I guess he cools him. I don't know, is he hot? Is the sun god hot? But anyway, there's a painting, there's an incredible painting of this, huge painting. It's half the size of this wall or more. And it hangs in the Chicago temple. I used to visit there all the time, and I was just, whoa, I got that painting. How did they ever get it through the door? It's really quite, and she's there, and here's the sun god. And of course, then the sun god explains to her, well, now that you've called me, now we have to have a child together. Well, again, I'm not married and everything. Don't worry. So he's by his mystic power. So she says, he'll be born from the ear. That's why her firstborn child was Kṛṣṇa, He's born, a little baby, just like Krishna's born with four, he comes out with 4 arms, conch shell and everything. Wow, what kind of baby is this? And so Devaki asked him, please transform yourself into a regular child, because if Kamsa knows you appeared, he'll come and kill you. So he did, and Nanda carried him to Vrindavan. We know the story. So this was, he appears from the, and Kṛṣṇa, he's got armor already. He's, how did that happen? So anyway, that's one thing. And so that was Durvasa Muni, because she served him nicely, And he also gave Duryodhana a boon. It's just one thing we want to give. I forget what Duryodhana did for him. Maybe someone knows the Mahabharata. But he had a boon. And so it's one of these things, well, I'll take it later. This could be a dangerous thing, like with no, I'm thinking of Ramchandra's father's wife, who KKE. Yeah. So she wanted the boon later. She saved him, and the boon was, okay, my son will be crowned, and you exile Ram to the forest. That whole thing. So anyway, he said, I'll take the boon later. So Duryodhana, when the Pandavas, you have to remember, they had the kingdom. That's why he had the Rajasuya sacrifice, right? Yudhishthira. And so much is going on with that. But then, because Yudhishthira is so strict that he observes the etiquette of a Kshatriya. So when challenged to a gambling match, you have to, say yes, even though he knew that there were cheaters on the other side. So this was that before? I guess that was before the Sabha. Was that with Draupadi? Okay, so the gambling match. He has the kingdom, and this Shakuni, he was now this dice. Prabhupada said no. Prabhupada said they're playing dice, or not chess. So the chess and the dice game are the same. It's the same game. Gopi Purana, he knows exactly. It's not actually dice. That and although it is gambling, but it's and it's not actually chess. Have you ever played Parcheesi? I have not. As a kid, I played Parcheesi. You throw the dice and then you move on the board a little bit. The thing. It's not the same as chess. But anyway, so they played that game, and even though Yudhishthira knew that he was a cheater, it's part of the dharma. Just like he wouldn't tell a lie on the, even though he should have told the lie on the battlefield. So he got into trouble with that. So anyway, he loses. He lost, first he loses the money, and then he loses the kingdom, then he loses the wife, and he loses themselves. The story. So Krishna appeared to Draupadi, wasn't stripped naked. So after having the kingdom, suddenly has nothing, and they're in exile for 14 years. And if they're recognized, then it's another 14 years, right? Something like that. Okay. So they had to stay incognito. So it's, all right, off they go, all 5 of them. 6, counting Draupadi. Anyway, so then they're out in the forest, and there's all kinds of adventures, I won't get into it. But Duryodhana has a plan. So yes, he can get Durvasa to come and wants the boon. So what's the boon? Well, you go to the Pandavas, go where they are. You figure out where they are, and you go with your 60,000 disciples. But be sure to go after lunch is served, because Draupadi had some boon. I forget how she got it, that she could feed as many people as possible as long as she hadn't eaten. What?
She had a special vessel.
Oh, a special vessel to eat from. Okay. So lunch was over, and then Durvasa comes with the 60,000 disciples for lunch. Just like the same thing with Ambarish. It's a thing with breakfast. Right now it's lunch. So Pandavas, Yudhishthira says, "Oh yes, we'll give you lunch. Just take a bath. In the river nearby. So what are they going to do? I can't give 60,000. There's nothing left." So Krishna comes to save them. So he says, "Well, just give me a little something, whatever." He says, "Nothing left. Just look in the pot. There's always something." So they found a little shock, a little vegetable, and he ate the vegetable. And suddenly, all the 60,000 disciples plus Durvasa felt full, completely full. They couldn't eat another thing. What is this? So they kind of sneaked away because they didn't want to offend them by not coming for lunch. They said, "Oh, lunch is ready." They knew it was. So they, in this way, so this is the Durvasa's thing. He comes, and somehow to offend for eating. So he's come to Ambarish, and I think it was Bandri Ramaja, asked this question, whether it was just an accident, or I think I read somewhere, maybe in a commentary, that it was planned that way, that he come to on Dwadashi, just the time to break the Ekadashi. And of course, Ambarish is very strict about Ekadashi. He always observed it, means he stayed up all night. He didn't eat anything, didn't drink anything. And he would break it the next day during that interval, like we always announce, okay, between 6:49 and 9 o'clock, you can eat something. So Durvasa came, quite a few minutes before the time of breaking, but he purposely prolonged his bath so that he was encroaching upon the time. He knew that the time was coming. So what to do? So Ambarish didn't want to offend his guest, especially a guest like Durvasa, by taking breakfast without him, because that's part of the etiquette. Kings, serve the Brahmins that way. So he consulted his Brahmin advisor. They didn't really know. So he said, "Okay, I'm going to just drink some water, because water is both breaking the fast but not breaking the fast." And any, implied was any gentleman, and he would not be offended by that, and we'd take breakfast together. So anyway, the time is long past. It's like noon or something when he gets out of the water. It's long time past, and by his mystic power, he could sense that Ambarish had drunk some water. That's a great offense. You're eating before your guest, So he creates a kritya. Now, according to my dictionary, a kritya is a female demoness, fire. But what's female about just a big, but the same word is used. You may know if you read the Krishna book, 10th canto, when Paundraka, remember Paundraka, who was the false Krishna? He thought he was Krishna. So he was the allies with the king of Kashi, which is Benares. So they sent a challenge to Krishna, and the messenger came and they described it, and everyone laughed. So you go back and tell them, okay, I'll come and we'll have I'm going to challenge you, like that. So there was a battle, and of course Paundraka was killed, and the king of Kashi, he was also beheaded. He was beheaded by the chakra, and then Krishna threw the head into the city. And at first, the people didn't recognize whose head is that. Maybe it's Krishna's head. Oh my God, it's our king, our beloved king, right? So the sun. I remember this pastime because in the play in New York, in Brooklyn Temple, there was a lot of plays. Prabhupada loved the plays. And we had these two devotees join who had been professional off-Broadway, not Broadway, but off-Broadway actors. Rasa Gyan, her husband, I forget his name now, Lohitaksha. So anyway, so we did a play about this thing, about this battle. And I was the priest whom the aggrieved son engaged to invoke this Kritya, another Kritya, a fiery demoness, Probably calls it a demon. And really, what's the difference? There's nothing feminine about it, there's this ball of fire just running to... Anyway, so so I was the priest, I had to kind of figure out what to do as the priest. So we got an unabridged dictionary, a big dictionary. I'm sitting there, and I made up a mantra, because the demon was called Dakshinagni, as a name, a fiery demon to burn all of Dwarka. So Om Namo Dakshinagni, Om Namo Dakshinagni, Om Namo Dakshinagni, and then we had this devotee. They dressed him up in this black cloth, and then they cut the cloth and they painted some of it red, and he came out of the, he was hiding on the stage, and he rose up and ran into the audience of devotees. And it was quite dramatic. So in real life, which in the 10th canto, he came to Dwarka, and he started, threatening Dwarka, and the devotee said, save us, Krishna. And Krishna laughed. He was playing dice, And so he said, okay, chakra, take care of it. So the chakra went out, burned the Kritya, and then went on to Kashi and burned the city. So, hold on a second. Let me put this in. So that was, and it's all this Durvasa. It's coming from Durvasa. So anyway, this is steadiness. Steadiness. And Ambarish, now this is the perfect, and Prahlad is another example, perfect steadiness, even in danger. And Haridas Thakur. So let's just go really quickly. So first, Haridas Thakur. Now Haridas Thakur was famous for always chanting Hare Kṛṣṇa, right? 300,000 names a day. It took him 16 hours or so. And so, two instances where he was tempted, where they tried to tempt him, because he was a very strict brahmachari, chanting Hare Kṛṣṇa. And so he had this little bhajan kutir, I forget what town he was, in Bengal. And so it was there was the Muslim zamindars and everything. They became very envious, of him. Why is he getting so much honor? The same thing as the Ravasa. So he said, okay, we'll make him fall down. So he hired a few prostitutes, and one volunteered. I'll seduce him, and then, you can arrest him. So he goes there in the middle of the night, and this is a young man, so he's chanting Hare Kṛṣṇa, Hare Kṛṣṇa, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rāma, Hare Rāma, Rāma Rāma, Hare Hare. So she comes and she bows down. She's a holy man, but she's got her mission, And she starts, doing the thing, and So he says, I don't know, he says the equivalent of "What's up?" You know, and so says, "Oh, I want to be with you." He says, "Yeah, no problem. I want to be with you too, but just let me finish my rounds. I took a vow to chant 10 million rounds this month, which is, if you count it up, that 300,000 names a day comes to that. 30 times 300,000. So just, I'm almost done." So Hare Kṛṣṇa, Hare Kṛṣṇa. You sit and watch. So she was sitting, and the sun rose. Said, "Oh, I'm so sorry, I didn't finish my rounds. Please come back later and, tonight, and we'll be together, no problem." So she comes back, same thing happens, And this time she gets a little bored, so she's also chanting and chanting. What else is there to do? Chanting. And then the third night, so actually then, what was it, Ramchandra Khan, I think, something like she said, "Well, how did it go?" So he said, "Oh, no, well, he said he had to finish his round, but it'll surely tonight. Don't worry about it. Then I'll be with him once, then the next time you come and arrest him, and it'll be fine." So she went back, and then the third night, the same thing happens, and it comes in, and finally she's become a little purified, and she realizes, oh, he's such a great soul, he's not even interested. So she bows down and apologizes, and Haridas says, no, I know the whole thing. I knew exactly what he was doing. I just stayed here to save you, So now you just keep chanting, and you can have this bhajan kutir because I'm going to go. And so she did, and she became a famous Vaishnavi, and then people would come and give her donation and rice and everything. And what happened to the other guy, I forget, but wasn't, he fell down, So it's the same thing here and so then on the other side, the famous, they arrested Haridas because he had been born in a Muslim family and converted to Hinduism, So they arrested him, and the Qazi says, so what do you have to say for yourself? He says, look, what's the problem? So many Muslims you converted them to Hinduism. What happens if one Muslim is converted to, one Hindu is, I'm sorry, you converted to Islam. What happens if one Muslim is converted to Hinduism? So that wasn't, the Qazi didn't take it so nicely. He said, all right, so now I'll teach you a real lesson. So usually they execute by beating. Prabhupada said he was sentenced to be beaten in 22 marketplaces. He was sentenced to be killed by beating. And usually 1-2 marketplaces is enough for ordinary, you can imagine. So Haridas said, just like Ambarish said, well, steadiness. This is steadiness. He didn't freak out, didn't try to run away, didn't apologize. No. He just said, okay, Hare Kṛṣṇa, Hare Kṛṣṇa, Krishna Krishna, Hare. And just as Ambarish didn't flinch. Here's this fiery kritya, I don't know what's feminine about it, but and ready to burn him to ashes, and he's just going, Om Namo Bhagavate, just like, in the movie. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya, showing incredible steadiness, So, and the chakra he had been given the chakra. He promised before, I read about this, that the chakra will protect you. So the chakra came, Krishna's chakra, and annihilated the kritya, and then went after Durvasa. Now Durvasa could have said, oh, okay, this is my time, Hare Kṛṣṇa, Hare Kṛṣṇa. No. So he started running. He says running, but he was doing more than running. He went up into the planets, and I think it was Brahma first, and Shiva. And everybody said, oh, I can't help you, So finally he went to Vaikuntha. We just come into that. And there's these several verses, and Ashram Maharaj gave a wonderful class, and he's going to give another class tomorrow. And where Krishna says, Aham Bhakta Paradino. I forget the rest of the verse right now. Oh, Asvatantra. Asvatantra means I'm not free. I am under the control of my devotees by their love. This is how to control Krishna. Now it calls to mind a very important verse. Some of you, those of you who have read the Chaitanya Charitamrita, the wonderful conversations Lord Chaitanya has in the teachings of the Sanatana Goswami, Rupa Goswami. And then there's also Madhya 8, the 8th chapter of the Madhya Lila, where Lord Chaitanya is traveling in South India. And on the advice of Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, he visits Ramananda Roy. And then there's a whole chapter, chapter 8, of the conversation between Ramananda Roy. And Lord Chaitanya takes the role of a disciple. And he wants to hear from Ramananda Roy, so he starts asking him questions. Please describe to me the most important aspects of bhakti and this and that. So he says, well, the first thing is varnashram. He quotes a verse from the Puranas about varnashram charara purushena pamakmaran. So it's a nice verse, but what you said, but no, that's external, go on, He goes on and on and on. And each time he chants a verse, that's very good, but it's external, can you go on? And first he had to convince Ramananda Roy to take the role of the guru. So Ramananda says, you're the Supreme Personality of Godhead, you're Lord Chaitanya, how can I teach you? So Lord Chaitanya speaks of one of these very important verses. Kiba vipra kiba nyasi shuddha ke no ye Krishna tattva veta se guru hoy. Whether one is a Brahmin, Vipra, or a sannyasi, or even a Shudra, because he was in the social role of a Shudra. One who knows the science of bhakti can be a real guru, So on the basis of this principle, Prabhupada was preaching and creating sannyasis and everything who would eventually become gurus. So anyway, so then he kept going up, up, up. Even sarva dharma parityajya, Lord said, oh, that is external. Can you go on? I said, oh boy, so what are we going to hear now, So then he comes to this one verse spoken by Lord Brahma in his prayers to little Krishna. It's called Brahma Vimohan Leela. After the killing of Aghasura, and that Brahma was startled. He came down. They're taking lunch together, and then he steals the boys, steals the calves. And Krishna expands himself into, very wonderful pastime, so all the mothers and all the cows can get the intimate service of suckling Krishna, and it's great. So finally, so Brahma comes back to see, well, what's happening? I stole those boys and cows. What's Krishna doing now? So he comes down again after a minute of his time, which is a year of our time. And there's Krishna still playing with the boys and cows. Nothing has changed. So then he becomes bewildered. That's the Vimohana part of Brahma Vimohana Leela. So he comes down and he's amazed. And then, so Krishna then, after he comes down, he turns himself, all of the boys and the cows and everything, they turn into Vishnu forms. And Brahma says, oh, what have I done? So he bows down. And then he starts offering prayers to Krishna. And I forget the first couple of ones, but then comes the third one, which is a very famous prayer, and which is what Ramananda Roy said to Lord Chaitanya, where he said, oh, that's very good. Now go on until he goes to the very intimate. So this is the prayer, and it's also pertinent to this pastime of Durvasa, because one of the Aham Bhakta Pratadinam, I'm not independent. I'm controlled by my devotees, So eventually he says you have to go back down to Ambarish and surrender, which he did and was saved. So here's the verse. He said, Gyane priyasam udapasyanamantaheva jivanti sanmukaditam bhavadiya vartam stani stita shuddhikatam tunavan manobhi ye prayaso ajita jito apitaistri lokam. Ajita jita means in this way you can conquer the unconquerable Lord. So it starts out with giving up your efforts to get knowledge on your own. Speculation. Jnane piyasam udapasya. Throw that far away. And simply surrender yourself to a pure devotee. Namanta eva. Jnane piyasam udapasya jivanti sanmukaditam. Sanmukaditam means from the mouth of the sat, of the pure devotees. Bhavadiya vartam. Listen to their recounting of your pastimes and other instructions. And so that's the first. And then snani stita. You don't have to leave home or anything, take sannyas. Just stay where you are. Stay in your position. But add these things. Associated with pure devotees, hearing them, and then what do you do with those vibrations? Here's the key. Snani says, Shuddhigatam, take this path of hearing. Shuddhigatam, tanuvan manobhir. And you serve those vibrations with your body, mind, and words. In other words, your mind, you hear and you think of them, you repeat them, and you enact, whatever instructions there are, like in the Bhagavad Gita, what to do with all your senses and all that you do. Tanuman manobhir. And in this way, ye prayaso, this is the only way, jita jito, because you develop more and more love for Krishna. And by that love only can you conquer the unconquerable Lord. And that's the point is, and Maharaj is giving this wonderful class, that bhakti is even stronger than Krishna. He responds, he comes under the control. Just like he comes under the control of his mother because of her pure love. I mean, he just killed Putana and Trinavarta and Shakatasura, so there's no question that even as a baby, he's still Krishna. But his mother can bind him. She can conquer him, you know. So anyway, that's steadiness, you know. One should become accustomed to this, reject anything against the path of spiritual progress. This is real renunciation. Okay, how far did we get? Did false ego after that? No. False ego means accepting this body as oneself. So this is what, anahankara, I think. When one understands that he is not his body and his spirit soul, he comes to his real ego. Ego is there. False ego is condemned, but not real ego. In the Vedic literature, in the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad 1.4.10, it is said, Aham Brahmasmi, I am Brahman, I am spirit. This I am, the sense of self, also exists in the liberated stage of self-realization. This sense of I am is ego, but when the sense of I am is applied to the false body, it is false ego. When the sense of self is applied to reality, that is real ego. There are some philosophers who say we should give up our ego, but we cannot give up our ego because ego means identity. We ought, of course, to give up the false identification with the body. One should try to understand, again, the distress. Now this is a Janma Mrityu Jara Vyadi Dukkha Doshana Darshana. One should try to understand the distress of accepting birth, death, old age, and disease. I always like to put them in the order. Birth, old age, disease, and death. You know, sometimes you'll find that order. There are descriptions in various Vedic literatures of birth. In the Srimad Bhagavatam, the world of the unborn, the child's stay in the womb of the mother, its suffering, etc., are all very graphically described. It should be thoroughly understood that birth is distressful. Because we forget how much distress we have suffered within the womb of the mother, we do not make any solution to the repetition of birth and death. Similarly, at the time of death, there are all kinds of sufferings, and they are also mentioned in the authoritative scriptures. These should be discussed. And as far as disease and old age are concerned, everyone gets practical experience. No one wants to be diseased, no one wants to become old, but there is no avoiding these. Unless we have a pessimistic view of this material life, considering the distresses of birth, death, old age, and disease, there is no impetus for our making advancement in spiritual life. Now this is of course, an essential thing to give us impetus for a spiritual life. Even the impersonalists, that's really the impetus. You know, mukti, right? They want mukti. But we find in so many cases, most famously in Lord Chaitanya's prayers, that he says, I don't want mukti. Nadanang nadanang nasundaring kapitang bhajakadish kamaye mama janmani janmani shure bhavata bhaktada hoitakitahi. Wealth and women, followers, the fruits of mundane piety, liberation from this world of limitless anxiety. For me, O Lord, these common goals have not the slightest worth. Let me serve you purely now and in any future birth. So that's a more advanced platform. To get us firmly on the path of transcendence, of devotional service, it's generally, this is like, yeah, I don't want to go through this again. And that and the threefold miseries, and there's some overlap there, disease, you know, the threefold miseries. So that is a nice impetus to get us on the path. But ultimately, devotees are, you know, the advanced devotees say, oh, you know, like Lord Chaitanya said, I don't care, birth after birth, as long as I can be a pure devotee. I'm not looking for money, I'm not looking for, you know, wealth, good marriage, whatever. That's not my motive. But that's a more advanced path, you know, to keep us, you know, enthusiastic about staying on the path of devotional service. That awareness of the evils of birth and death and old age and disease is a good impetus. It's like, I always give this analogy. From the front, Krishna's inviting us, right? You read the Krishna book and you see the deities. Oh, it's all nectar. I want to go back to Godhead, like that, you know. But then if we get a little inattentive, you know, we get a little attracted to this and that, a little weak in our sadhana, then we should imagine Durga behind us with the trident, you know, and keep us on the path, right? And those the threefold miseries of birth. So it's that's why dukkha dosana darshan. This is one of the principles of knowledge. Means to be aware of it. Don't put it aside, because people don't think there is another kind of life. Of course, no one wants to be diseased. Okay, I got health insurance. Yeah, right. That's not going to solve the problem. But basically, we say, well, there's no escape from these without escaping a material body. So we use the material body with our higher superior intelligence in engaging it in Krishna's service. And that material body becomes a way of giving up the material body because you're transcending it. So that's the whole idea. Okay, I started a little late and now it's become poem time. You ready? All right. So this is an old favorite which I sing every day if I can. The first Kunja Biharashtaka. All right, here comes the phone. Now you're going to take a picture? Okay. So we'll do a few of them. I think we don't have time for the whole thing. 1 or 2 or 3. Okay, who's going to play? Can you play the kartals in time at least? I don't know. You operate the phone. Okay. Yeah. Who's going to learn how to play the drum? How about you, Sureshwar? Come on, you could at least throw one hand. He can hold the tune very nicely. Okay. Indanila mani manjulavana pullani pakusamanchita karna Krishna labara kusorasi hari sundaro Jayat Kunja Bihari. His smooth complexion conquers sapphire stunning to the eye. Kadamba blooms with fragrance full on each ear gently lie. His beauty's great and by his chest where Kunja necklace stays. All glories to the Lord who in Vrindavan's forest plays. Chakora longing for the moon of Radha's radiant face. A thief purloining patience from the cowherd's wives apace. Is expert rhythmic dancing, winning all the gopis' praise. All glories to the Lord who in Vrindavan's forest plays. Okay, and this one is especially nice for here. When Indra's sacrifice he stopped, he stole the Deva's pride by playfully uplifting giddy Govardhan to hide his friends and cows beneath the hill for 7 nights and days. All glories to the Lord who in Vrindavan's forest plays. Gaur Premanandi, Hare Hare. So if you come tomorrow. It's Taco Tuesday. So we'll pick up from that verse and we'll go through maybe the rest of them. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Thank you very much.